Right, so as you can see behind me, I've got the grainfather back. The chaps at grainfather have kindly agreed to let me have it for a little while and to put it through its paces again. I mainly wanted to get one back again just because there's been some changes. I'd looked at my video today and it was January of this year that I did that video. So it's nearly kind of coming up for being sort of 12 months old in this, well, here at least anyway, kind of thing. I don't think it was quite out then, but anyway, it's now available in, I believe most countries, definitely in kind of North America. It's obviously in New Zealand and here. And you know, since it started, the support from the grainfather people themselves has been excellent. Any kind of complaints or issues with grainfathers that I've seen on forums have always been dealt with very, very promptly. They've been resolved without kind of, you know, too much heartache to the end user, which is excellent. They've demonstrated that their customer service is second to none. But not only that, they've listened to what people have said about the machines, and they've made gradual improvements on them. And I'm thinking now, for me personally, there's probably no real kind of major issues that I have. You know, there'd be nothing holding me back from buying one. The only thing that holds me back from buying one is where I am in the flat. Sometimes I find it hard to pull the basket up when it's on the countertop, and really the grainfather is designed to be used, I would say, on a lower counter where you've got more height to pull it out, or on the floor. But with the kids running around, it's an odd day where they're not here today, that's okay. But I am going to keep it on the countertop because no doubt they'll come home later and they'll be held to pay. So, but that's not really an issue. That's personal preference rather than the machine itself. It's, you know, it's no fault of its own. It's designed that way and it works. But I still would like a small grainfather if they did a kind of 10, 15 litre version, maybe. 10's fine, I think, but it was like half the size, grain basket could come up. I'd love that. You know, there are other small machines out there. I don't see why there's not a market for it. I know you can do a small grain bill, and this is what I do love, that this machine will do both. There's kind of no extras you need to buy to do that. It's just a simple case of the malt pipe inside, you adjust. Perfect. You know, there's no extra expense. You, from the box, you go from kind of like, I don't know, you could do smaller than 10, I'm sure, all the way up to, I can't think of the limits that people have pushed it to now, but pretty much from 10 to 23 or maybe even higher. So the improvements that definitely have changed are the little attachments here where you attach the recirculation pipe to the main body of the pump. They've now got these kind of little silicone boot sort of things that keep them together, which are sort of cable tied on, which makes a much more secure connection. Personally, it was never an issue for me on the test model I had before, but you can see that there's a vast improvement there. It also looks to me like the thermo wells slightly changed where that goes in. A little bit loose on this one, but it used to be a slightly different design. But there is an extra bracket now added to the recirculation arm. There was only one before. I know people have had issues with the welds breaking. Again, grainfather have addressed them and helped them out. There is also now a ball valve added to this, which allows you to slow the flow going into the water chiller at the end. There's another valve on top, which at first I was concerned that I was moving this valve and the ball wasn't opening, but this valve on the top actually activates once you've put the recirculation arm in, so it's like a push fit in. So once you still have to screw it on, but once that push pin goes in there, it allows the ball valve to open and the fluid to travel through. So it's like a safety valve kind of thing, so you're not going to have to keep putting that little cap on like we had on the first models. We had to screw it on. Excellent. So that's another big one. And inside, I'll have to get it out, is a new hop filter. The last hop filter was just kind of a pushing one. This is similar again, but it's a bit more, well, it's obviously longer. And I believe it will draw up more from the bottom. I think you can leave less dead space in the bottom now with this one. But again, you know, another improvement. I know that people did have, or have had issues with pellets clogging it and that, but the two brews that I ran on the first filter, I never had any issues. It sent fine. I know the only other thing is sometimes with the concealed element inside, you do need to give it a little bit of a scrape because you get a bit of a build up of the wort on there. And I think that's true of any boiler with a concealed element. I remember I had it in my old setup when I had a 3-vessel setup that had a concealed element, and you did need to scrape it because if you didn't, the build up would kind of slow the element or make it sort of go to a point where it felt like it cut out. just a little gentle thing with a spoon or a paddle, and then it's off again. So that's the other revisement that I can see and I know of. And the one thing that they have done, which is great, because it bugged me initially, is when you've got your malt basket, that will be inside the basket. That's the tube that goes on. You used to have a little cap, which was just like a lid of a steel spirits bottle. It was nothing fancy, but now they've given you this, which has got like a cap on the top, so no matter what level you've got the recirculation tube in the centre, that will, when you're doughing in, it will stop any grain going into the top. So even if it at its highest point, that stops it there, you're never going to get the grain going into the top, which is excellent. You know, and you can't lose that over the little cap before. I mean, there was certainly times where I thought this cap's going to end up in the mash somewhere and get lost, but if you can lose that, then I don't know, there's no hope. So that is an excellent amendment. I think that is pretty much it. I mean, the only other thing, not to be critical, but it's, you know, it's always good to look for things, but I mean, I think some people would say the glass lid. For me personally, I worry that one day I'm going to put that glass lid down carelessly and smash it. But they do seem really solid. I guess they're kind of like tempered glass and whatnot. They seem fine. You know, I haven't heard of anyone breaking one yet, so, you know, who knows. But obviously it's been designed that way for a reason, the way the machine works. So yeah, I'm going to do a brew today on this machine as well. I'm going to do a couple of brews while I've got it. I think I'll do a little batch and a big batch. But I'm not going to kind of go through the ins and outs how the machine works, because I covered that on my first video and I'll link to that on this one. But it works in the same manner. The control panel is still the same. The one other great thing I almost forgot is now the app that they have, which initially when this came out, the people were saying, you know, like, oh, how do you know about your timings and whatnot. Now the app does everything. It will even do, once you've keyed in your recipe, and it also has the grainfather recipe packs that they have in New Zealand. You can just select the recipe pack. It will tell you how much sparge water you need, how much strike water you need, and not only that, it will give you your timings. And I'll cover that in a video later on. And it just takes you through it. So it's like you've got your own little timer from the app, which is free. They've provided that for free. So now there's, you know, what else is there? You've got all your timings. You can set your mash, go off. You've got your phone. Your phone's going to alert you when to do it. It's all there now. I think it's great, and I love the app. I think it's really quite good, and you can save the recipes in it. So next time you're brewing that recipe, you just press that button, and it's going to take you through it. It's, you know, that's perfect. So what I'll probably do is I'll cut back to a bit of brewing footage, and I'll cut that in between, and I'll do a little bit of a roundup at the end. But you know, I think, you know, even before doing a roundup at the end, it's safe to say that if you're looking for a brewing machine, you know, you want to save on space, you don't want all the, you know, the fuss of free vessel equipment, getting all different pots and that. You've got everything in one box. There is a little bit of initial setup where you've got to screw the recirculation arm, put that there, the little bracket. But once you've done them, you're not going to keep doing them. I mean, you can strip it all down for a deep clean, but most of the time, you know, everything's going to be as it is, and everything fits inside the grainfather. That's another, you know, the beauty of it. You know, even the chiller, when it comes in the box seems massive on the outside. And when you get it out and everything is inside that you need, that's the footprint of where you need to store it. So if you've got space issues, and I know all about them, this is the thing, you know, this is going to be perfect for you, because that's all the room it's going to take up. And I've got to admit, I love the chiller. I can't wait to use the chiller again, because for me, when I used it the first time, it's the one thing I loved about this machine was I've got an immersion chiller and it works great. But the counterflow chiller was just, there was something about it, the way that I could flip it on and it could be pitching or going into the fermenter as it's cooling, and it was the perfect temperature. It just worked so well. Right, the grainfather's reached mash temperature, and I'm just going to add the grains in, give it a stir, and then start the recirculation off. Right, we're just at the mash out stage. I know some people don't mash out, but I like to on this system, on the grainfather, purely because it brings the, you know, the temperature up to a closer boil. It makes it a whole lot easier. I've got my induction hob out to heat up the sparge water. Sparging with 15 0.8 litres, I think it is. The induction hop's really quite quick. The cool thing with the grainfather app I've noticed is sort of about 20-25 minutes before the end of the actual mash, it said to start getting the sparge water on, so it was quite good to sort of do that, let you know that kind of thing. I mean, I normally do that anyway, but I like the fact that that app told you that, so they really thought that app out quite well. I found the black treacle, the whole molasses thing. I think Brewmaster Ben was saying that with the I can't remember the company who makes them now. The molasses that he had, I think they're more like a powder form, so they're a lot easier to kind of, or like crystal form. Whereas this is like messy. So that is probably a reason for using that, to make it easier as well. And I think there might be a slight difference, but this is what I've got in. I weighed out the hops ready to go. Candy sugar's in a little bottle. I'm thinking to add that at the end, I'm guessing. Or do I need to add it before the boil? I'm not too sure. I mean, I guess it's as long as it's mixed in, but I don't know. So just waiting for the mash out to finish. Then I'm going to pull the basket, which is going to be a pain, I know, but the grainfather is designed to use on the floor, but it's grief. And I know the kids could come home at any minute. It'd just be easier to put it, which is a bit of a battle when you've got a large grain bill, I have to admit, but we'll see how we get on. So I'll cut back when we pull the basket, and hope we don't have any accidents. Right, mash out has been done, and we're going to attempt to lift the grain basket on the counter. Result, it is damn heavy. When you're lifting it higher and you're trying to go higher than yourself, if you was standing over it, it's much easier, but what can I say? I'm just going to add the 15 litres of the sparge water gently over the top, and then we'll cut back boil time, but you don't want to see me pour water in there, really. Right, I've got the grain basket out, just dumped the grains in the bins. It's hard work getting rid of that much grain, I have to admit. It makes me realise when I do small batches why it's that much easier. It's coming up to the boil. We're at 90 degrees. I should put the lid on really to get it right up to the top. A little bit worried it's going to have a little bit of a boil over because it's very close. It's got a 90-minute boil, and then the first edition of Northern Brew will be going in. I don't know why the camera's never rolled in when these things happen, but I went off just before it got to boil, and I don't know why, but I went away. And when I came back, there was like a volcano coming out the top of the grainfather. The lid was on, and it was just like pumping out the top. It obviously reached boil, and there was just like the hot break was all stuck to the lid. It was coming out of the volcano. I just spent like 10 minutes cleaning the kitchen before the wife gets home. It was probably the biggest boil over I've ever had in brewing. It was just, I can't even describe it. It was just a mess everywhere. But I guess it goes to show that the boil is quite vigorous, and it gets there pretty quick. So never leave your boil kettle, and don't attempt to take a glass lid off that's boiling hot with your bare hands in a mild panic, because that hurts as well. Sadly, the wife and the kids are on the way home, so it's pretty much going to wrap up the rest of this brew day. We are at the boil. We have 2 more additions to hops to go, candy sugar and the molasses, and that's pretty much it. Time to kind of finalise the grainfather review of salts. I have to admit, it's not been kind of the video that I hoped it would have been, because I had to cut the footage short due to family coming home, and also because the machine had a little bit of a leaky issue. I have to admit, and I have to disclaim straight away, that obviously the grainfather was sent to me again to test, for free, kind of do a review and then send it back to them. And I contacted them to let them know the unit was a little bit kind of leaky. They offered to send out replacement parts to sort it all out and that. But as it was so near Christmas, it was at the point where I just thought, let's just kind of get this review done and kind of move on. There was a lot going on at Christmas time, and anyway, that aside, I just wanted to kind of cover what I think is good about the revisions, and kind of like a general roundup for the Grainfather. So a year on from when I had it first, I covered most in the first part of the video that you'll see here after before the brew day footage, but just wrote a few things down. For me, the biggest thing was the malt pipe. They had the little tiny steel spirits cap. That new pipe work that they've replaced it with is excellent. There's no chance of you losing that. It goes down the centre tube. It's a long piece of kind of stainless steel with a big cap on the end. You can't lose that. It's perfect. It's fit for the job now. The new hop filter, never had an issue with the last one. The new one seemed to work just as well. I mean, I don't know if it performs better with hop pellets. I used leaf hops in this brew, and it was fine. I believe you get a little bit more liquid drawn off the bottom as well, which is always a plus. The rubber seal for the top filter, that's an addition that never had when I had the Grainfather initially. They had one on the bottom, I'm pretty sure they did, or at least I'm convinced they did. But now the top one, I guess it stops any extra grain kind of seeping through the top, but it's never really an issue. I know there's a bit of an issue with people getting them in, a little bit of spray of Star Sand when it's wet. They seem to go in fine, and maybe they come a little bit more malleable after they've been used a few times. But that's an addition. I guess it helps, but I never really an issue for me initially. The new hose boots, the kind of little rubber bits that go around the hose connectors from the recirculation arm into the pump. There's kind of new little rubber things that got little ridges. The hose clips clamp onto them. Again, I thought I initially had a leak from one of them, but I think my leak was from the bottom of the Grainfather. But again, this was a test unit that had been sent to various people, so it's going to get a little bit more wear than your usual Grainfather that's going to be packed away when it's finished. The mini ball valve that goes on the recirculation tube as it comes up, you used to have to put a little kind of stopper cap and then put the little recirculation elbow kind of thing onto that. That little ball valve is excellent to be able to, as a safety device, to cap that off, and then you ain't going to get no hot beer squirting out if you accidentally put the pump on when you haven't got the recirculation elbow put on there. Perfect. What else? I have to say, early doors, and I'm going to do a little bit of a feature on this in a minute. People complained about the lack of kind of automation, that you kind of have to still kind of touch it and press buttons, know when the hop timings are and all that lot. But they have defeated that kind of problem and beyond. The Grainfather app is fantastic. I have to admit, if there's one thing about the whole brew system, is the app. And I'm going to just probably, what I'm going to do is run through my kind of brew footage that I had on there with the app and show you, kind of quickly skip it through and show you how good the app really is. Yeah, well, I think that's pretty much it. With the app as well, we'll cut that. The minor points, bad points, the only thing I can really see is that sometimes you have to scrape the element a little bit. There could be a little bit of hot walt build up. It will go kind of congealed on the bottom, and you have to kind of scrape it, because it might. I had it in the early days, it stopped the Grainfather briefly, but then I've had that on other boilers that have had a concealed element, so that's not kind of, it's not a complaint of the Grainfather, but I think if you've got a concealed element where the walt's going to build up on, that probably could have happened on an element that's exposed maybe, I'm not sure. But it kind of dropped the temperature a little bit, little scrape of a spoon, and it was off again. It's kind of, I don't know how you would avoid that anymore. I guess the only real minor would possibly be the bits that they have improved, the boot bits that go into the recirculation arm. Could there be kind of more of a metal disconnect there that goes into the pump rather than a bit of rubber? I don't know. It's probably the only issue if you really want to kind of pick holes in it. But other than that, I think, with the brewing machines that are out there, there's kind of, is there really one great one? Because at the end of the day, it's the machine that suits you for your needs. They're kind of, you can't expect to buy a machine and expect it to be great for everyone, because everyone's got a different setup, different environment they use it in. But for what you get with the Grainfather, the chiller, which is absolutely fantastic, I love that thing, and everything else that you get with it, it's an all-in-one kit. It fits inside the Grainfather when it's finished. It's perfect. It's cheap in comparison to some units, and it does what it says. I mean, every beer that I've had out of it has been fantastic. I have to admit, I've not had a bad beer from it, and that's got to be telling that the process is great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up this kind of review with just a little bit of a run through of how the Grainfather app works. People that have got it will know, but people that don't might be interested. But I think it's a fantastic addition, and it doesn't cost you anything. They've made it free, and the bits that it does on the app are excellent. So I can't recommend it enough. So if you're holding out on buying a Grainfather and you're not sure, I can only say that it's, for the money, it's probably the best kind of to start up. If you're thinking of getting into all grain, you're in a space confinement. My only issue where I use it in my flat is I find that if it's on a countertop, because it's quite narrow and tall, you're going to be lifting it quite high. So you're either going to want to be able to have a hoist to be able to hoist it out, or really ideally have the Grainfather on the floor or somewhere where you can have it on the floor. So if those issues, if you couldn't have it on the floor, you might have to kind of look at other arrangements. But for most people, this machine is going to be ideal to get them into brewing. Right, so I'm hoping that you can see this. This is the Grainfather app. You go into it, and what's excellent about it also includes the Grain Kids recipes, which you buy a pre-packed kit that's got all the grains and whatnot, and you can brew that on your Grainfather, and you click that and it's going to be set up already. But what you can do is enter your own recipe. So you'd go in, and I'll just show you. You can create one. You'd add recipe name, all the things that you need for a brew day, and fermentation step as well. Everything it covers. So I'll just take you through where I did the peculiar one that you see a little bit of footage for. It's got everything that I've entered in there: the batch, the expected gravity, the boil time, the yeast, and you can even add extra additions, kind of like if you are adding an additive or kind of like a syrup at the end, or you're doing an extra dry hop. So if we come out of that, right, so here we go. So we've clicked on the peculiar one, and we're going to click the session, and it'll tell you it'll give you all your mash times and that, but you would have entered how long you're going to mash for, how long you're going to boil for. So let's do start session. It will now tell you to add 17.8 litres of water to the Grainfather, to set the temperature to 67 and make sure the heating element is switched to normal. You click continue, and then when it was heated, you click start the mash, and that will count down. So it'll start a timer, and that will give you your 60-minute mash, or however long your mash is. And if we complete that step, we get an audible alarm to let us know that we're finished. And this goes on all the way down to fermentation. If we kind of finish that in the stage, that's your mash out. It tells you everything that you need to do on your brew day. So that's the sparge completed. Obviously I'm skipping through this just to show you. Boil complete. It's telling you to add the flame out additions. We'll finish that. Hop stand complete. Now it'll tell you to enter your final gravity, or your original gravity rather, sorry. So if we just do, and it'll let you know to use the counterflow chiller, pitch the yeast and start fermentation. Continue. And now it'll literally count down how many days till the end of fermentation. And this is the cool bit. When you do finish stage, it will ask you to enter the expected FG. So if we enter something that was like 10.0, 15, it will then say fermentation stage incomplete. So it will say, letting you know that it's not reached the gravity that it's expected, and you can then extend it by, say, 1 day, 2 days to allow the beer to finish out, or you could just click finish if it has finished, and that's it. It takes you all the way through the beer, which I think is a fantastic addition.